In the heart of Igbo land, where traditions held firm roots, the village of Umunne was a place of deep culture, pride, and unspoken rules. It was a community bound by its own complexities, where everyone knew their place and boundaries. In this village, social status meant everything, from the clothes you wore to the food you ate, and even the way you walked. It was a world where the lines between the rich and the poor, the educated and the unlettered, were clear as daylight. And for Nkechi, a young woman from a wealthy merchant family, life had always been about being seen and maintaining that perfect image. But she was more than just a beautiful daughter of a prominent man. She had dreams, desires, and a heart that longed for something more than the expectations placed upon her. On the other side of the social divide was Ugochukwu, a young man of humble origins. Raised in the village's dusty outskirts, Ugochukwu had always been the subject of ridicule and condescension from the more privileged villagers. His father was a farmer, a simple man who lived by the land and never strayed far from his roots. Ugochukwu had received only a basic education, having worked in the fields alongside his father from an early age. He was strong, resourceful, and intelligent, yet his social status often made him feel like a shadow in the presence of those who held the reins of power and wealth. Theirs was not a world meant for love between the rich and the poor. It was a late afternoon when fate brought them together. Nkechi had gone to the village square, where the local market was held every week, to purchase fruits for her family. Her presence alone turned heads. Dressed in an elegant Ankara blouse, gold bracelets adorning her wrists, and a gentle, poised smile that made her seem untouchable. As she walked through the crowded market, heads turned and murmurs followed her every step. Her father's wealth gave her the privilege to stand above others, yet on this day, something unfamiliar tugged at her heart. Something different, something she couldn't name. As she turned a corner, the smell of freshly baked yam caught her attention. She approached the stall and met the gaze of the vendor, Ugochukwu. The sight of him startled her. His rough, calloused hands expertly flipped the yam. He was the very image of simplicity. His clothes were plain simple, but his eyes held a spark of something unfamiliar. It was a fierceness, a quiet strength that commanded respect despite his status. "Would you like some roasted yam?" Ugochukwu asked, his voice steady but tinged with curiosity as he noticed the contrast between her pristine appearance and his humble stall. Nkechi hesitated, unsure whether to dismiss him as just another peasant or to engage with him in a way that felt unexplainably natural. She had never spoken to anyone like him, someone who wasn't trying to impress her or win her approval. I'll have some," she said, her voice softer than she intended. She felt something shift in her chest as she took a seat on the nearby bench, waiting for him to prepare the food. It was strange, but she felt at ease, something she rarely felt when surrounded by the pressures of her world. Ugochukwu handed her the plate with a modest smile, and as their fingers brushed for the briefest moment, an invisible spark ignited. Between them, the intensity of the moment was undeniable, but both of them remained silent, unsure of what to say. As she took a bite, the roasted yam tasted like nothing she had ever eaten. It wasn't the richest food, but it was cooked with a simple, honest flavor that made her feel grounded. For a moment, she forgot about her family's expectations, the stares of the people around her, and the world of privilege she had been born into. "Do you come here often?" Ugochukwu asked, breaking the silence, his voice filled with genuine interest. "Yes, but I usually don't get a chance to talk to the vendors," Nkechi replied, her eyes meeting his for the first time. She saw a flicker of recognition in his gaze, as if he too had felt the unexpected pull of the moment. They talked for hours, exchanging stories about their childhood, their families, and their dreams. Ugochukwu spoke of his father's farm and how he had always dreamed of something more than the land that tied him down. Nkechi shared her passion for art, a passion that was hidden beneath the layers of societal expectations that demanded she be the perfect daughter of a wealthy man. But as the sun began to set, reality began to creep in. The whispers started again. The townspeople began to notice Nkechi sitting with Ugochukwu, their deep conversation clearly betraying the social norms they had both been bound by. They couldn't understand why a woman of Nkechi's status would be seen with someone like Ugochukwu. They began to cast glances of disapproval, and soon the judgments were loud enough for them to hear. "Nkechi, what are you doing here?" A voice called from across the market. It was her cousin, Ifeoma, with a look of disbelief etched across her face. "You should not be seen with the likes of him. He's beneath you." Ugochukwu's face hardened, his pride pricked by her words. But it was Nkechi who spoke first, her voice strong. "I am here because I want to be Ifeoma. His food is the best in the market. Maybe you should try it sometime." Ifeoma looked at her, her expression a mix of concern and disbelief. "Don't forget who you are, Nkechi," she warned, her tone turning sharp. "You belong with people who share your status, your class. Don't ruin your future." But Nkechi's heart was no longer with the world that demanded she conform. She turned back to Ugochukwu, her eyes now full of determination. The tension in the air was palpable, but it didn't matter to her anymore. She had already made a choice. "Ugochukwu," she said, her voice steady, "I'm sorry for all of this. I didn't expect any of this, but I don't care about what anyone thinks anymore. I want to know you." Ugochukwu was silent for a moment, his heart racing as he searched her eyes. For the first time in his life, he was torn between the woman he had come to care for and the harsh realities of their different worlds. His pride, his sense of self-worth, and his love for her clashed within him, creating an unbearable tension. But as the villagers watched, they couldn't know what was about to unfold, a love born from the deepest of societal divides, one that would challenge the very fabric of their community. The journey ahead would not be easy, and the world would not let them be. As the night deepened, the conflict inside both of them grew. Neither could escape the pull of their hearts, yet both knew that the world they lived in would never accept their love. As the days passed, Nkechi and Ugochukwu found themselves meeting in secret in quiet corners of the village, away from prying eyes. Their connection grew stronger with every conversation, every shared laugh, every moment of vulnerability. Yet the weight of the world around them bore down on their love. Ugochukwu knew the challenges that lay ahead. His low status, the judgment that would surely follow, and the endless whispers of the villagers who would never understand. For Nkechi, the battle was no less difficult. She could no longer deny the pull she felt toward Ugochukwu, but every encounter with him was a rebellion against the life her parents had planned for her. Her family expected her to marry into wealth and power, to secure alliances that would only strengthen their influence. The idea of marrying someone like Ugochukwu, a man from the village's outskirts, a man with nothing to offer in terms of wealth or social standing, was unthinkable to them. Her father, in particular, would never approve. But Nkechi's heart was no longer in the world of opulence and expectation. She knew that the love she felt for Ugochukwu was pure and untainted by the superficial judgments that governed their lives. The more she learned about him, the more she admired his quiet strength, his intelligence, and the way he carried himself with dignity, even in the face of adversity. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the village and the sky turned a soft shade of pink, Ugochukwu found himself standing outside her family's compound. He had come to see her one last time, though he knew it would be difficult. The rumors were growing, and it was only a matter of time before the pressure would break them apart. But tonight, there was something different in the air. It felt like a moment of destiny, a moment to decide whether to walk away forever or to fight for a love that seemed impossible. Nkechi stepped out into the courtyard, her eyes lighting up when she saw him. She didn't care anymore about the consequences. There was no turning back. "Ugochukwu," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I can't lose you." "I can't lose you either," he replied, his hand reaching for hers. The touch of their hands felt like the final seal of their unspoken promise. The world, with all its rigid expectations, could do nothing against their love. Together, they had decided that no matter the outcome, they would face whatever came their way. As the moonlight bathed them in its soft glow, Ugochukwu pulled her close, and for the first time, they were not defined by their social status, their family names, or the judgment of their village. They were simply two hearts, bound by a love that could not be measured by wealth or position. "I love you," Nkechi said, her voice barely above a whisper, but it held all the power of the universe. "I love you too," Ugochukwu replied, his heart swelling with a mixture of relief and joy. And for that moment, in the quiet of the night, they knew they had found something more precious than any title, more lasting than any social status. They had found each other, and that was enough. The world would have to change, because their love was unstoppable. And so, they stood together, hand in hand, ready to face the future, not as the wealthy merchant's daughter and the poor village boy, but as two souls destined to walk through life side by side against all odds.